Hey guys, I'm George. I work with Saltbush Assurance, Google. I'm going to be giving a short presentation today about bringing your B game to attack high security environments and exactly what's involved. I think I should stress the stuff. None of this stuff is, in my mind, terribly impressive or sophisticated. It's all pretty much free tools and messing around with TV. Let's get into it. We're going to look at a theoretical best practice corporate network. It's got all bells and whistles, secure gateway, 50 virus check, application whitelisting, patch management that's done every single day within 20 seconds of patches being released because they're that good. Unprivileged user accounts. And it's vast, by my own admission, it's a vast level of simplification. There's always like little things that get a little bit complicated. So thinking about the gateways, most people allow their staff to surf the internet. They also allow emails, attachments. Malicious payloads can be dropped into Word documents as macros. It's pretty trivial to spoof emails, perform social engineering, and get someone to open an email, so we're going to skip that bit. And oddly enough, ASD recommend that you only permit signed macros to execute. So when you go into Word and you do configuration and say signed macros only, it's got to be trusted. Oddly enough, by default, Microsoft support the global PKI for trusting signing macros. So, how hard is it to beat our friends antivirus? I got an interpreter. I created a word venom, rearranged some of the code, and put it through VirusTotal, got 1 out of 49. I should mention that one engine that called me was a Chinese engine. So I'm sure that all the big companies and government organizations have got that stuff installed. So next thing we'll look at is this new thing called advanced threat protection. It's the idea of you request a document through a gateway, and the device will open the document and see what happens. Look for any connections, calling out any malicious payloads, phone traffic, anything like that. So to test this, I got 4 different behavioral analysis engines for these different things and created a whole series of different tests to try and trick it and make sure that they weren't cheating and all sorts of other stuff. So I had documents that would open a benign payload, documents that had a payload but wouldn't open it, documents that open a malicious payload, and then also some stuff with some basic user interaction. So what were the results? Well, pretty bad. Of all the engines I looked at, only one was actually able to detect the payload in the first case. None of them could detect the payload if I required a simple interaction by clicking the button. So you send someone a spreadsheet, it says click here to view all the guys that got sacked. That's it. And believe it or not, the HTTP engines actually let the first document drop through by design because they can't do the analysis in time to serve you. So calling home through the gateway is the next thing. Interpreter DLLs, I'm doing interpreter for all this stuff, why not? They're all flagged by antivirus when they go through the gateway. They get picked up because they've got MZ headers and an application octet string. So what do we do about this? To understand how big these things, you've got to understand a little bit about how they work. So these gateway engines will look at declared types and antivirus signatures. Those are the general 2 things. So oh look, you're an application octet string, therefore you must be evil, I will block you. Or it'll go, oh look, you're an image, I'm going to let you straight through because I don't know what the hell that is. Which is the key point. Web servers are often misconfigured and they'll say that they're serving a JPEG when it's actually a bitmap or a PNG or whatever. And the computational time required to actually do all that checking and validation to make sure that that is actually an image is just not practical in a real-time environment. The other thing is that if you don't understand it, you let it through. Because if you start blocking stuff that you don't understand, then 3/4 of the internet falls over. So the question is, why do we have to play by the rules? Well, you know, Metasploit already has a stage encoding option that gets the DLLs, that downloads in subsequent stages and just encodes them, and then they get dropped straight into memory. So all the filter sees is garbled junk. And it wasn't hard to modify the framework to change the content type to something else like, you know, image BMP. Oddly enough, it just works. It comes straight through. It runs straight through everything. I can't demonstrate that today, I'm afraid. The next thing to look at is application whitelisting. So that works by checking an executable file that's loaded from disk. It includes batch, executable, Visual Basic script, VB script. Fortunately, it doesn't get Java, Office macros, application vulnerabilities, or reflective code injection, which is what Interpreter does when you bounce between different processes, or you load new stuff into memory. So it's not that great. What I'll do is I'm just going to put on one that I prepared earlier that just has a quick video that demonstrates exactly how good application whitelisting is at stopping. So you can see we've got a virus checker, we've got Windows up to date. We're going to sit here and wait for a little bit. Yeah, okay, that's up to date. I don't have any patches, I'm pretty sure. Let's just go and scan it. Oh, what do you know? It came back. You can see that the application whitelisting is in place. Group policies just said, no, it's fucking, you can't run plugin. Go on and open the document. It's tried to enable the macros because I haven't enabled them by default here. But we're just going to let them run macros. And off we go. I'll then configure Interpreter to jump over in the background, so migrate processes automatically as soon as it starts. And I go and close the document because it's crap, there's nothing in there.
7 Australians and 2 New Zealanders are among 200.
Then I'll figure out I'm on a workstation, and then I'm going to take a photo of the sucker on the other side. Cool, being persistent. So sticking around. We're going on the assumption that we don't have administrative privileges and we don't really need them. So there are different options. We're going to look at an automatically executing macro and how we can do that using home tools, sticky tape, MacGyver style. So what I did was I just configured Metasploit to migrate to a new process on connection. Set up a macro to hide word, execute interpreter, wait 30 seconds and quit. Copy document to an unused location, give it some sort of inconspicuous name. Set up a shortcut to load the document and then add a registry entry to load the shortcut start using the local user's privileges. So this is the code itself, as you can tell, is really clean. And we've got another demo where I'll show you this working. Yeah, I can run Interpreter, but I can't run PowerPoint. Okay, here we go. So first of all, you can see just showing the different registry settings. The reason that I actually set up a shortcut to run Word and open the document is that you can't set up an entry inside a registry to run a program with arguments. So I use the shortcut as a way of bypassing that. So you can see a wonderful folder there called updating.doc, and you'll see why in a second. So as he logs off, normally I've got those two icons, but normally if you had a taskbar that has like the document name in it, then it'll come up with whatever the name of the document is next to the icon. So putting in updating, what you'll see is that, you're probably a bit too quick there. I don't know if you saw, but this flashed open for just a second, and it will say updating and then disappear. Really easy stuff. And again, I'm going to take a photo of the stuff on the other side. Which is not right. Cool. So basically, game over. Yeah, you can tell. Pick a single guy in the room.
He's not laughing.
From here, it's pretty easy to get around. You just rinse and repeat. Find documents that other people are going to want to open on shared drives and drop those macros into them. Awesome. Lot of keystrokes, target administrators, senior managers, they're going to have your good stuff. Target patch management infrastructure, if you can get in there, then you can just start uploading your viruses as part of the regular patching process. That's another story. Look, I think still in top 4 are awesome. Like someone was saying earlier, it get cuts out a lot of noise. You can stop the really stupid stuff versus the moderately stupid stuff. Blocking macros at the gateway, only permitting digital signed macros by trusted sources, and revoking trust for all external sources. It's basically trust any of those promises. Internet whitelisting, if you can get away with it. It's a good way to get yourself fired. And the other question you've got to ask is there another way in? I can knock something together like that in an afternoon, one guy. I'm sure that you get a whole team of people and we can think about it for a year, they'll come up with 2 or 3 dozen. So that's it for me. I'm going to hand over to Nathaniel and he's going to take over the other side.
Awesome. So I've got to follow that. We essentially break into each other's networks, or he breaks into mine. Not to try and stop him. It doesn't work. The best I've come up with so far is being able to at least sort of kind of detect him when he's in, and then boot him out so he can start again. And that's a pretty good representation of what was in the corporate environment. How many people are in a security team for a 10,000 seat environment? But let's go through some practical things. I'm gonna approach this in a more business-centric way. Us as security people seem to get in rooms and we talk about cool hacky things, about how we've gotten around the latest tools and all this kind of stuff, exactly what George has gone through. And trust me, there are some very advanced techniques that George can use. This is the stuff he uses on a Sunday afternoon. But we're speaking to the converted. One of the biggest problems we've got as security professionals is not being able to articulate what we do and what we're trying to protect the business from to the people who actually hold the purse strings, to the people who employ us, and probably most importantly, the people who are actually providing the services and who own the data. So It's maybe a little bit executive, but hopefully I can give you some verbiage at least to start talking in a business sense, to try and get some of the investment that you would actually require to do the things that you all know we need to do. But we can't get the buy-in from our stakeholders. So, okay, let's have a look at this. How do we prevent no PT attack? Well, you can block all active content entering your environment, as you said, assign macros, all that kind of stuff. You can block, most environments actually block just executable straight up, so we don't accept the exceptions. But including the IT environment with domain admin. But you can also block all changes to Windows startup keys, which I think is like a really cool idea. But who's tried to do blocking stuff inside a business environment? I mean, I have, and it is a pain in the butt, especially when you think you're going to be really smart and try and sneak that in there. No one's going to notice. Except that one business unit that really requires local admin privileges, and they will kick your butt. All right. At this point, standard security people just go, well, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to tell you, and you're not going to, listen to me, then I'm not going to do anything. Right? I'm just going to click the button, look at the light, it's broken again, we got hacked again, you're not looking, sweet, awesome. But there could be another way. And security people, especially from the vendor, the consulting firm, anyone who's trying to sell you wares, their standard sales pitch comes in and they say, look at what's happening over here, here's some graphs, the latest Gartner study suggests. The business owner's going, well, that's great, but I've been listening to this for 10 years, right? And my data still isn't on Pastebin, so sweet, right? I am awesome, I have perfect security. Once you start to look at the evidence, and Chris went through this, right? Like, logs are so important, but you take those preventative measures that you think are going to be excellent inside your environment, that are actually going to make a difference, put them in logging mode. Yeah? Gather the evidence and then present a case to the business. Right? If you can break the conception that we haven't been hacked, and you actually show evidence of actual bad activity and their data being wholesale trucked out of the gateway, you seem to get a little more traction inside the environment. So, and we do this, we'll take it back to a common analogy, because if we're talking about ones and zeros, it really easily gets lost. Managers glaze over, and they go, security guys, they're crazy. So, let's bring back to an industry that's been around for decades, the transport industry. When they are building a tunnel, and this is the tunnel down here, one of the many that no one uses, they want to prevent something from happening. They want to reduce the risk of people dying in their tunnel. Yeah, because tunnels are not really sort of safe places. So, they have a whole bunch of preventative measures in place. Speed limits, they have 2 tunnels, so they don't have cars, flying at each other inside a tunnel at 100 k's an hour. Lights, good lighting, all that kind of stuff. These are all preventative measures, right? But the speed limit isn't 5 k's an hour. It's still 80, 90, sometimes it's really lucky it's 100. They have those preventative measures in effect, but to the point where it doesn't affect people using the tunnel. That's what the tolls are for. The point is that they have all of these preventative measures in place, but you can still do business. You can still actually travel from one end of the tunnel to the other with, reduced risk of actually crashing, but it's not going to stop you from actually getting to the other end. But what else do they do? That's not everything they do, right? They have operation centers. Every single tunnel environment, transport tunnel environment, you look at SCADA networks, you look at Physical infrastructure where someone can actually lose a life. You know, we have air traffic control. So all the planes just sort of jogging for position. Be good at this. They have full monitoring systems, right? So monitoring doesn't stop anything from happening, but it lets you know when something's happening. Okay? You know, they're not just sort of sitting on top of the tunnel going, I wonder what the smoke is. Right? They've got cameras. Not only have they got cameras, they've got heat sensors, smoke sensors, air quality sensors, all of these sensors in there. They don't stop business, but they monitor what's going on. And that's great, right? Like you can watch a crash happen. You know it, you saw it. But they go one step further. They have rehearsed specialized equipment. They rehearse their response techniques and they have trained personnel ready to go when a particular event occurs. An event that they know is coming, right? And you can't tell me, with all the vulnerability scanning and stuff that we've seen today, that you don't know that you're going to get hacked at some stage. Right? In fact, you are hacked, just looking at your antivirus software. But all of these things work in tandem, right? And they are able to successfully operate tunnel networks without losing a lot of people, you know. So I don't think, have we had a crash in the dress room in the tunnels? Like this actually killed someone? I don't think so. But you know, they're doing a pretty good job, right? And we're still using it, and it's all good. So, let's bring it back into security. Why do we have security? Well, you know, to reduce the risk, negative effects, assets. You need to learn how to use this terminology because business uses the term risk. That's how they make decisions. Okay? In anything that they do, they use the term risk. You need to really understand what risk is. Most importantly, we've all seen CIA. Most security people think that security is CI. It's not CI. It's availability as well. Right? If business cannot function, what are you doing there? You won't have a job because the business will fail. Because they can't do business, the thing that generates money to pay your wages. Right? So as a security professional, your job is not to say no, it's to say how. How secure. Right? So how do we measure risk? Some of you may have seen this before. I would suggest you have a look at it again. Likelihood times consequence equals. How do we want to reduce risk? Well, we reduce either likelihood or the consequence of the event happening, and that de facto it reduces risk. Great stuff. So how are we doing it currently? Traditional security budget spend, you know, don't ask me where it is, I'm responsible to make them up, alright? But indicatively through hundreds of different customers, you know, we've seen here what Chris has told us, you know, everyone puts in the flashy light stuff, right? The, you know, the WAFs, the next gen firewall stuff. That's all prevention technology. But the biggest point is that prevention technology, when you start moving up into the next gen stuff, starts to get really expensive for that much effectiveness. Yeah? If you're talking about baseline preventative technology like, you know, AV and firewalls and proxies and manifolds and stuff, you can actually go to the vendors and get a package deal that they sell all of those things because it's been around for a while and everyone's got one, so you can play one off against the other and actually get a really good price for some pretty cool kit that does a pretty good job. Right? The other fact is that the monitoring and response budgets in those things are essentially cannibalized or more money into the new flashy light stuff. Okay? And that's the world we live in right now. But at the end of the day, that the more money you push into prevention, it's going to push, prevention effectiveness up maybe 1%, where if you put the same amount of money into monitoring and response, you push it up like 5, 10%, for the same amount of money. So how does this approach reduce risk inside the business? Well, prevention and blocking technologies only reduce likelihood, right? That's it. That's all they do. They do not affect consequence one bit, right? When you put, once a preventative technology is breached and they're inside the network, you're done. They're in there forever because your preventative technology didn't work. Okay? So what I propose and what we've seen seems to work and is working well, and if you look over in the US, they're pouring more and more money into this kind of approach, is, well, for the US government, you just overfill all of these buckets and it's fine, but a bit more and then, and then get government contractors in that don't do anywhere near this, and then, they get into that. But if you rebalance, don't buy the latest wickety-wig prevention tool that's not going to be put in properly anyway, and it's going to be tuned down so it's not noisy. Spend some of that money in training staff. Spend some of that money in looking at the logs. Spend some of that money in something that will enable you to look at those logs and look at the evidence of compromise quicker, easier, and more efficient. Yeah? And not only that, train the personnel so that they can actually understand what's going on. I swear to God, security wasn't a problem. Security was always a problem, but in the days when there were Unix admins and there wasn't an IT security job, Unix admins and Linux admins knew their systems inside and out. They had to, right? They knew the interactions between memory and CPU and disk I/O and all that kind of stuff, and they knew services and how those services worked and all that kind of stuff. Now, admins don't have that knowledge because it's all button clicks, it's all Windows, just next, it's all good. And it's pushed onto the security admins to know that stuff. Unfortunately, you've got 500 IT security IT operations people and 2 security team people. They just won't be able to understand the entirety of that environment. But how does modern security methods reduce risk? There is a very bad one around like cyber warrior or something like that. It's actually fairly poignant. Prevention technology is your shield. Monitoring is being able to see on the battlefield, and obviously the sword is something you can actually use to respond. Be aware, I'm not talking about going out and trying to hack them back. That's the best way to do it. I'm talking about responding inside your environment. Okay, and read any of the case studies around the APT and all that kind of stuff, but those methodologies can be used anywhere, and they are being used today. We're using it to still kick out Conflict, let alone all the Zeus variants and all that kind of, standard script kiddie malware and stuff like that. So, monitoring and response methods can be applied to consequence. So they can actively reduce consequence. So in this calculation, if you have a balance between preventative technology and monitoring and response effort, you'll actually have a greater risk reduction. But one of the most important things is that monitoring and response doesn't prevent business functioning. I'm sure just about anyone who works in an enterprise environment has run to a point where the business wants to do something so silly that there is no more preventative technology that you can shove on top of that silly idea that would make it acceptable in risk. Never. We'll just start on the internet. It's going to be a great idea. Revolutionise it. It's sort of something cheaper. Yeah, I saw someone logging into the bank mainframe of a particular bank On the train.
His name for accident.
Yeah. Oh, they all do. Yeah. I don't know where it's at. Yeah, he's essentially Citrixing in, jump boxing into his secure environment, and then logging into his ground screen, making sure. On the train, 4G friggin' wireless. Anyway, so how do we do this, right? Like this is good managerial speak and all that kind of stuff. Like you can go and maybe talk to the risk team, and if you are in the technical team, stop fighting with your risk team. No, you do. Go and talk to them and try and, because they're actually your best friends, right? But they're trying to be the happy medium between business and, you guys telling them what they're doing is silly. If you can get them to put in their risk plans or explain to them the importance of monitoring and response, it's training dollars, by the way, right? And extra team members in your security team. That's what monitoring and response is, generally speaking. If they put that in their risk plans and they say, for this business process to work, for us to do it, it can work. You do these prevention things, but you must also buy another security resource. Right? It will get done. You complaining to, if you can see the CIO or just your manager or whatever, and showing them the latest data breach and, selling them insurance essentially, will not get you anywhere. Right? If you start to provide evidence through the monitoring of the environment, and you start to do root cause analysis of the environment and show them evidence of a breach, that will get their attention, right? Because they are insurance salesmen out. They will not listen, CIOs and business people will not listen to insurance pitches anymore. So what do we do about it? This is usually a basic. So when I walk into an environment and do like security assessments and all that kind of stuff, they've got all these wiggly-wig things, but essentially they're running that. Yeah, good place to start. Don't get me wrong, but these are the people that say I've never been breached. The first question I ask them is, how many viruses did you detect in your environment in the last week? And they go up like a couple hundred, some say a couple thousand. But just about every single piece of malware that's out there now is capable of data extraction. It's capable of a whole bunch of things. It's code base and plugins and all that kind of stuff. It's an interpreter. You are breached. You just haven't found it yet. Right? And that's every single environment that I go into. They are all breached. Right? So you've got to get them across that threshold. So what do we do with that kind of stuff? Well, this is breaking down like a 6-step process into 3 slides, so please bear with me. We build off those things. You might look at IPS, you should definitely be looking at OS patching. Patching, by the way, we throw it out there as if you should be patching. Why aren't you patching? Try it. It's a process. It really is. You have to automate it. Just OS patching. The amount of bad code that's written out there that's stuck to a certain version of .NET or Java. Just go. There are other ways to go around it. When you look at monitoring, just turn reporting on. Make sure the reporting is actually reporting on the period of time that you set it to report at in increments. I've had environments where they're reporting monthly on the amount of viruses, but they're only looking at the last 24 hours of data. So, like, how many viruses have you got in the last month? Oh, we only got 80. Okay, you've got 840 instances of one particular virus over the last month. and about 6,000 in total over the last month. Right, and that's just accurate reporting. Now that stuck a firecracker up, and actually did something about it. Yeah, but I had to provide the evidence. Without the evidence and without turning it into business speak, they won't do anything about it. And most importantly, and this is some basic stuff, just do some root cause analysis. Just don't get buried. Take one problem and take it from start to finish, and then tell that story to the business. Yeah? That will win out with investment and buy-in every time. Just giving them random statistics that never really change and just do this doesn't tell them anything at all. It won't get them. And then advanced, if you really want, defense grade, security, all that kind of stuff. You want to start looking at, now you can see over here, all we've done over in prevention is maybe patching and maybe some DLP. Like you can do actually basic DLP with some endpoint products, just to give you a view of what's going on. But that is where you get here. Right? Host and network-based forensics. All the logs are there. You think Apache logs are fun? Try Windows logs. Right? Try Windows artifacts. You're taking out file locations. Just if you can do it, go back and have a look at your endpoint protection technology and see if you can monitor anything that gets run from anything other than the Windows drive or program drive. Trust me, you will find some auto start things in there that won't make you happy. Right. Also check out the user and system run keys. Right, there's a number of them you can get off the net. Anyway, so that's pretty much what we're looking at, and that's where I am so far, to at least detect this guy. Sometimes.